Hello and welcome to this Conversations on Groong episode. As Armenia heads into the 2026 parliamentary election cycle, domestic politics and rhetoric is heating up. The stakes are high, the government's popularity is extremely low, and the future is uncertain. To discuss the political affairs in the country, we have with us Mr. Levon Zourabian, who is the Vice President of the Armenian National Congress Party of Armenia, the ANC.
Before we dive in, a quick note for our friends. If you love what you hear and you want to help the Groong gears to keep turning, you can support us at podcasts.groong.org/donate. Whether it's a monthly pledge or a one-time caffeine boost, it is all appreciated, and we will take it with gratitude. If times are tight and we get it, you can still help by commenting, sharing, liking, and that gives us a big algorithm boost, as you know. So we do appreciate any support you can provide.
Yeah, and not just YouTube. Go to YouTube, Substack, Twitter, Facebook. We are everywhere on all the social media. We're even on Telegram for those of you who use Telegram. So please participate. Like Hovik said, comment, share, like with your friends and your enemies.
And now that we're done with our digital panhandling, on with the show.
Hello, Mr. Zourabian. Welcome back to the Groong podcast.
Hello, my dear friends, Asped and Hovik. How are you?
Very good. It's been a long
Good.
time. I think we talked a year and a half ago, and we should do this more often.
Time
I
flies.
completely agree with you.
So we have a slew of topics for you today, but let's start from the regional and we'll come to Armenia at the end. Trump just finished his first international visit, and again, it was to be the Middle East. He visited Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and Qatar, I believe, and no Israel this time, which is curious. He has authorized direct US-Iran nuclear talks and has even fired his national security advisor, who was apparently coordinating with Israel for an attack on Iran. So, meanwhile, Israel has threatened direct attacks on Iran's nuclear facilities, especially if the talks fall apart. But it seems even without that, Israel is also in the midst of a full-scale genocide of the Palestinians in Gaza. And hundreds of people are dying every day, civilians starving, and full-scale depopulation is under threat. Meanwhile, on the Iran talks itself, they are very confusing because sometimes the U.S. officials make statements that seem to be okay, like, some enrichment is okay, and other times they make statements that are very extreme, saying that there is going to be no enrichment, which basically to me, would seem like a red line for Iran. So it's very confusing where the negotiations themselves are going. So I just wanted to ask, it seems like the negotiations are the underpinning of everything in the Middle East right now. What are your views on the negotiations with Iran, Mr. Zourabian? And are you optimistic that there will be a diplomatic solution to this?
Okay, thank you for this question because it's a very good starter for our conversation. And, the whole situation with Iran-Israeli confrontation bears a lot of significance for Armenia's security. Everybody was witnessing that in its relations with Armenia on the international scene, Azerbaijan behaves as a bully and is not ashamed of that role. And they believe it can do, that Azerbaijan can do whatever it wants with impunity. There should be some explanation for such posture. Because despite the fact that Armenia agreed to all demands by Azerbaijan in relation to the text of the peace agreement, Azerbaijan still rejects signing peace with Armenia, and Azerbaijan allows itself a rather impudent tone in its relations with such superpowers as the United States, France, Russia, Iran, which, okay, we don't consider a superpower, but still probably much more powerful country than Azerbaijan. Not to mention that France, the United States, and Russia are still existing co-chairs of the OSCE Minsk Group. So what is the explanation for such impudency? You know, in a sense, Armenia has fallen victim to Israel-Iran confrontation, and I will quickly explain. For decades, Israel was seeking a war of annihilation of Iran as a possible nuclear threat to Israeli existence. You heard those stories. You probably listened to Professor Jeffrey Sachs's analysis on 7 wars, which actually was not his idea, but the idea of Bibi Netanyahu, who conveyed that to the United States presidential administration and the NATO structures, and they were loudly speaking about that. Israel considers Azerbaijan as an important strategic ally in that war against Iran. For what purposes, you would ask? First, as a bridgehead from which it can conduct intelligence and military operations against Iran. That is first. Secondly, Israel considers Azeri minority of Iran as a very important explosive separatist material that can help them to conduct a war of dismemberment of the Iranian state. And I mean it when I say dismemberment, because that's the plan. They want to create some Azerbaijani state on the territory of Iran that will annihilate or reduce the threats from the Iranian state. And also, they believe that eventually those Azerbaijanis, the minority of within Iran, can become a major supplier of the ground force in the campaign against Iran. This is why Israel is helping Azerbaijan so much. This is why Israel helped Azerbaijan to design its war against Armenians in Nagorno-Karabakh. It's no secret. They provided digital maps of the territory to Azerbaijan, as well as both reconnaissance and strike drones and high-precision artillery, everything to help Azerbaijan to defeat Armenians. So Azerbaijan believes that Israel will be able to smoothen any problems related to the international pressure in regard with its aggression towards Armenia. And it believes that from the very first day of the dual Israeli-American military campaign, it can attack Armenia without any serious international complications. No coincidence that they were speaking very loudly about possible Armenian provocations against Azerbaijan to start in April of this year. You remember that in their press, they were always speaking about that. And this coincided with exactly the time period during which Israel wanted to start the military campaign against Iran. It's not a coincidence. They were coordinating their possible military campaigns. And we know this based on leakages from the Israeli and Western media. From the same leakages, we know that the Americans actually decided to postpone the military action from April to October. probably you've read those leaked reports.
New York Times.
Saying that the defense secretary Hexet was actually asking for those postponements, saying that American troops and commandos need more preparation. Actually, you're right when you listed or when you spoke about all these new facts, and there was more feeling of relief when we learned from some new press reports that President Trump has discovered that Bibi Netanyahu has been plotting behind his back with National Security Advisor Michael Waltz and other neocons from the administration in order to pull the United States in launching the military campaign against Iran. I hope Trump is really angry.
Do you believe Trump really wants to have negotiations, or do you believe that he is also sold on because you seem to imply that the war has been postponed until October, the attack against Iran, which means that has Trump signed off under those plans?
I don't know. Let's just try to think loudly about all these events and see what other developments we have, and we will come then to conclusion. Because since then there were very interesting developments, such as, for instance, U.S.-Hamas negotiations, direct negotiations through Steve Witkoff, chief Trump negotiator, to release the only hostage of American citizenship from Hamas prisons, which was successful. They also unilaterally stopped war with Yemeni Houthis, meaning the United States. And Israel now continues the war on its behalf. And as you said, they engaged in very serious negotiations with Iran on the nuclear deal. And then we come to this same question. Can we feel completely relieved? Because these problems matter for us. They immediately deal with our security, as we already have analyzed. Can we believe that the war against Iran has already been prevented? Or it was just, as you said, or I said, or I hinted, postponed to October? Well, I don't think we can be relieved. I don't think we can be now confident that nothing will happen. Trump's diplomacy reminds me the negotiation technique of a New York real estate mogul, which switches from threats to a more reconciliatory tone now and then comes back, and the whole thing continues. We, by the way, see the same things happening in the Russia-Ukraine negotiations. At some moment, he threatens Russia with sanctions, or at the other moment, he says Zelensky is not prepared for real peace. So that's a tactics, diplomatic tactics, and sometimes it's not too conventional, not too traditional, but still that's the way he behaves. But if we try to understand what the real Trump's position is, I want to believe that behind this facade of inconsistencies and repercussions, there lies Trump's sincere desire to become a peacemaker and not a warmonger. We don't have completely guaranteed final conclusion, but we have some grounds to believe that Trump personally is more devoted, even against all the pressures by the Israeli lobby, which is very powerful in the United States, and he really has the power to engage, to pull the United States in the conflict with Iran. Still, I hope, and at this time, I believe, without really iron guarantees, that Trump doesn't want to resort to war.
Yeah. The only question that remains to be asked is whether having some deep down wishes is sufficient to not be led into war, especially if there are some false flag attacks. But I guess we'll see. We'll see the answer to that soon.
Let me tell you, I don't rely only on his desires or his wishes or whatever he thinks how he wants to be remembered in history. There are also strategic considerations because many military experts say that such a military campaign by the United States can really end disastrously for the United States itself, because the American troops in the Middle East are exposed to possible attacks. Iran can attack economic facilities in the region, and this whole thing can produce a very profound economic and security crisis.
That and also the cost of all these wars, because as you know, just Iraq cost America over $1 trillion.
Completely agree with you.
Right. So he's very conscious of the cost of everything.
Absolutely. I agree with you. And that's providing some hope to us all.
So following his visit to the Middle East, Trump has renewed efforts, as curious as this might be, to expand the Abraham Accords, a diplomatic initiative that began during the first term of Trump to normalize ties between Israel and the Arab states. And now, in his second term, Trump's administration is actively exploring new signatories, it seems. And Armenia has even emerged as a surprising candidate. U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff recently suggested that both Armenia and Azerbaijan could be looped into the framework, linking their inclusion into a broader peace process between them. It seems ridiculous to talk about peace between Arabs and Israelis at the current stage, but I'm not sure. I was talking with Osped yesterday, and is it fair to consider the Abraham Accords just like dead or pipe dreams, or is there maybe something going on behind the scenes that we don't know about? So I wanted to ask you, do you think that as Israel is continuing its genocide of Palestinians, how serious is any talk about the Abraham Accords right now? And then we'll go later into this weird inclusion of Armenia in the process itself as well.
Well, to address this question, let's first turn to Holy Bible. I mean, what Abrahamic word means in this whole process. We know that sons of Abraham were Isaac and Ishmael, or I should say Ishmael and Isaac, because Ishmael was the eldest one. And it is known that Ishmael is considered as patriarch of Arabs, and Isaac is considered as the patriarch of Jews. So what they are hinting on is this blood connection that Israelis and Arabs have. So Abrahamic Accords mean the reconciliation of brothers in a sense. But then they were speaking about including Azerbaijan in these accords, which sounds a little bit strange because as far as I know, Abraham has no science that would give birth to Turks. and now Armenia is considered in the same notion. So we understand that probably the name of the accord should be changed. But anyhow, let's now turn to the substance of those accords and what they can mean for Armenia. We know that the Abraham Accords were designed to build a reconciliation between Israel and Gulf Arab states on one hand, but on the other hand, to create a counterbalance to the growing might and power of Iran. So in a sense, it was designed as anti-Iran, entente cordiale. Then we know that the Chinese made a diplomatic coup, a diplomatic revolution, when they actually negotiated between Saudi Arabia and Iranians. And in a moment, the whole picture has changed. And there was more rapprochement between Saudi Arabia and Iran than between, for instance, the same Saudi Arabia and United Emirates with Israel. So instead of Iran to get into regional isolation, it was Israel who was actually isolated.
Levon, if I may ask you, Hovig and I have been discussing over the past day or so how much that Chinese brokered agreement made a difference in, for example, the Arabian countries, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Qatar, in convincing Trump that Iran may not be a bad regional player. It's actually a benign regional player, and to stop all the wars against it.
There should be something to it. I mean, of course, if the Americans see that the process does not isolate Iran, the diplomatic process in the Middle East that does not isolate Iran, it should think a little bit otherwise and try to find out other ways. Because, the whole thing was designed for the isolation of Iran. And now it doesn't work. And there are unresolved issues between the Arab states and Israel. And, in the beginning, when there was not this Palestinian-Gaza conflict, in its current genocidal stage, then, there was some feeling that, some Arab countries can turn a blind eye to the Palestinian issue, to the recognition of the Palestinian state by the United States and by the United Nations, and can actually choose an alliance with Israel. But now it's impossible. No Arab state can now, easily forget about the Palestinian cause and forget about the fate of the Palestinian people. Because you're right, what we are seeing is a genocide completed online, before the eyes of the whole humanity. And that's why I think the Abrahamic Accords cannot work at this time. One positive element in what Witkoff is proposing is that, if somehow we go, by the way of the worst scenario, meaning that the United States and Israel start the attack against Iran, can we consider this position of the United States there, on the inclusion of Armenia in the Abrahamic Accords as expression of their willingness to defend Armenia against the Azeri attack in the case of the worst scenario? I mean, of course, we can express such hopes, but I'm not sure that in this, big geopolitical development, somebody or anybody would be remembering about the Armenians.
Right, right. Under the situation, it's. I'm not sure exactly how they would help. I mean, Marco Rubio yesterday was saying that they are trying. The United States is trying to prevent an invasion by Azerbaijan. They don't want any kind of violent attacks at this time. But I'm not sure exactly what kind of physical presence they have to prevent this.
And how would it fit into Israel's goals anyway? Because it seems like for Israel, Armenia is just like a speck on the road to dominance of the region. So
I don't think that Israel, has any problems with Armenia. It's not that they hate us or they
of course, yeah,
want to destroy Armenia. No, what they want is, to help Azerbaijan. They want strong Azerbaijan, able.
As a bulwark against Iran.
Yes.
So let me rephrase my question. Would the U.S. help and U.S. and Israeli potential help and prevention of an attack from Azerbaijan imply that Armenia is also cooperating with this war against Iran? I'm not sure that seems to be the
You know what? That's another very dangerous aspect. I mean,
yeah.
if this is really an entente cordiale or an agreement against Iran, then it's very dangerous for Armenia because it is against Iran.
I think that just the mention of Armenia in this Abraham Accords is throwing off, I believe, a lot of alerts among Iranians, and that's exactly why I mentioned it. Yeah.
I think we have too many enemies to be able to afford another one, especially such a powerful country as Iran. No, it's we should stick to friendship and cooperation with Iran, and they are very strong in providing security guarantees to Armenia.
Yeah,
They
absolutely.
say it with absolute resoluteness. They resolve. Why while we don't hear the same, for instance, from the United States.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we need really strong guarantees, and we don't have them. We don't have them from the United States. Those are just wishes.
Right, right. I just don't see it myself. But let me take us to another festering war, if I may. Trump promised before he came to the White House again that he would resolve the war in Ukraine in one day, but he hasn't managed to do that. The war in Ukraine continues. And after talks with Moscow, he's now hinting that it's not his fight to finish. And Europe has picked up this mantle, backing Ukraine with a hardline stance and introducing military policies. Meanwhile, Russia is advancing. It has retaken Kursk. It's wearing down Ukraine's forces. And even though Ukraine is still able to attack Moscow with drones, the war outcome may shape the global order and influence Russia's next move in the South Caucasus. And this is what's really interesting to us. Can you tell us what your view is on how the war in Ukraine is evolving?
As you mentioned, the strategic initiative is on the Russian side, which slowly grinds the Ukraine defenses down. And slowly is the keyword, because in fact, this has become a war of attrition. And that's very important to understand. It's Russia's resources against the resources of the West. Let's put that way. Because, the most important development in the military technologies, there were these drone technologies, which once again made war a very slow thing. In the First World War, everybody believed that war is a very fast thing and you should attack. But then it turned out that new technologies don't allow for quick war. And the whole World War First became a war of attrition and war of resources. In the Second World War, these blitzkrieg strategies using tanks once again made war a quick thing with very important breakthroughs and seizures of vast territories, etc., etc. Now the drone technologies brought new reality to the world of wars, and the war has become once again a very slow thing, which turns contemporary military warfare into a resource struggle. So we should understand this is Russia resources against the resources of the West. And attrition wars like these, they end when one side collapses or both are exhausted to the extent of collapse. And both sides have their vulnerabilities. Russia has also its own vulnerabilities, such as its national autonomies with some accumulated grievances that can explode at some moment, and probably the strategy of the Western countries and Ukraine is based on that expectancy, on that expectation. But let me tell you that Ukraine is closer to the verge of collapse, because they are on the verge of losing the necessary supply of soldiers. It lacks manpower, and recruiting soldiers has become a very painful and violent process that causes a lot of discontent in the Ukrainian society. People do not want to go to war anymore.
Levon, so what are the possible outcomes, and how does each one affect the way Russia would re-engage with the South Caucasus?
Look, we already witnessed the first results of this war of attrition, because what the United States are doing actually signals that they want out of the war. Why? Because, they don't want to continue to bear, all the difficulties related to at least funding or financing that war. And we can understand the Trump's administration, because what they are saying, in fact, is that, we have $35 trillion of state debt. We have $1 trillion per year to service that debt, and we have $1 trillion of military expenditures. That's the first signal, according to the very outstanding British scientist Niall Ferguson. It's the first signal that the empire is in trouble when servicing your debt exceeds your military expenditure. And that's why Trump resorts now to this Dodge project, brings Elon Musk into that, because they need to somehow cut the government expenditures.
Or, of course, if you think like the Trump administration, you increase your defense budget so that your debt servicing is not more than your defense budget.
Well, I think that's temporary increase, because they understand that they cannot, it's not sustainable. And,
right, I hope.
And that is why the United States understand that they cannot continue this attrition war, to bear this attrition war on their shoulders, and they want to be out. So that's one of the most important outcomes of this attrition war. And then this whole conversation starts. What Europe would do? Is Europe ready to unilaterally bear those difficulties? Is Europe ready to fund the Ukrainian war, to send weaponry to Ukraine? Well, here also we see problems. I mean, look at the economic situation in Germany, in the United Kingdom. Why not in France? They are all, very close to economic crisis.
But I think that one of the ways that they figured out, or they're trying to address that, is essentially military Keynesian policies, where the defense industry is gonna, or military industrial complex is going to help bring, economic, benefits as well. Do you think that will work for Europe?
The problem is that while Russia can really rearrange its economy and to put it on the military foot, the West can't do that the same, because it's the Western societies are democratic societies, and the democratic societies can really mobilize a lot of military potential when there is a strong threat to their existence. For instance, the United States in the Second World War, they mobilized the whole economy against Japan. They built so many ships, military ships, that Japan couldn't compete with them. But for that you need to go to some extremes. You have to completely rearrange your economy, and the economy should start to work on completely different principles, which is something that the West can't do. They cannot, put in industrial powerhouses, on production of tanks, artillery, missiles, etc., unless the United States declare some war situation for the country and completely change the economic structure of the country. It works in war times, but it cannot. You cannot, in the democratic societies like the United States and Europe, you cannot do semi-war. Either you are in war or you are in peace. So, in this sense, I don't believe that that Europe will be able to actually replace the United States as the chief funder and supporter of the Ukrainian war. And that means that, Ukraine is closer to collapse than Russia. Once again, nobody can give 100% guarantees for that forecast. But one thing that we can state with complete certainty is that Ukraine looks closer to collapse than Russia today.
Yeah, and we've had numerous people talk about the fact that Russia would be more engaged in the region after such a collapse. But let me actually spin this into our region. In March, Armenia and Azerbaijan announced that they had finalized a 17-point peace agreement. Weirdly, right after that, Azerbaijan started shooting at Armenia's border positions even more frequently. It's almost a daily occurrence. In addition, Azerbaijan and accused Armenia for it. And then also Azerbaijan doubled down on its existing preconditions to the signing of any treaty, and even introduced new preconditions, like we're hearing a few days ago. In Tirana, for instance, last week, Pashinyan was meeting with Aliyev, he met with Erdogan, and he met with EU leaders, while European officials urged swift signing of the peace treaty. Aliyev reiterated his conditions or preconditions, such as the dissolution of the OSCE Minsk group, demand for Armenia to amend its constitution, preclusion of any outside forces on the border between Armenia and Azerbaijan, the establishment of an extraterritorial corridor through Armenia. Many other demands have been heard, and Aliyev was so confident that he said Pashinyan will meet all of his demands. The only question, I guess, is which of those demands is a precondition to signing any peace treaty, if that is even possible, and which of those is something that will happen anyway without a peace treaty. So to us, these developments suggest that the peace talks have become a series of essentially unilateral demands from Baku. And Pashinyan's job seems to be to socialize these demands within Armenia just enough so that he doesn't lose power completely, but then is able to quietly execute the orders coming from, Aliyev. What are your views on these talks, and what did Pashinyan achieve by going to Tirana? Um, and in general, like what's going on in these talks?
Well, the most important question that we all are entitled to ask Nikol Pashinyan is what is the main outcome of you satisfying those incessant demands by Azerbaijan, whether after satisfying all these demands you have been closer to peace by 1 centimeter. And we see that no, that's not the case. I mean, you remember, Pashinyan would come and say to the Armenian society that we need to, give Azerbaijan 3 villages, otherwise the war will start, and we need to, start this whole, procedure of delimitation and demarcation of the border between Armenia and Azerbaijan. And the only outcome of this is not the process of delimitation and demarcation as he would propose to us, but only the turning of these 3 villages or 4 villages to Azerbaijan. That was the only outcome. You would suppose that, okay, after this concession, Pashinyan should at least show us that Azerbaijan has become less aggressive and more reconciliatory. That doesn't happen. Azerbaijan increases its demands. Every concession, and those concessions are only unilateral from Armenia to Azerbaijan, every concession only raises the appetites of the aggressor, makes him more aggressive. I mean, this is something unprecedented in the history of diplomacy and negotiations, when one side, one party agrees to all the terms proposed by the victor for the text of peace agreement. But when that party agrees to every wish of this party, of the victor party, that party still rejects signing the peace agreement. This is unbelievable. Never seen in the history of diplomacy. Even capitulations have, their logic. I mean, you fulfill all the demands of the victorious side, and then the peace is being signed. That doesn't happen.
This is why actually Hovig and I stopped calling these communications between Aliyev and Pashinyan negotiations, because it's not negotiations. Admittedly, they're talking, so we decided to call them talks instead of negotiations, because one side is not negotiating.
Yes, these are talks on concessions, which do not stop. They do not stop. And every concession makes Azerbaijan more aggressive. And you are right. I mean, you would expect that when you declare to the whole world that Armenia and Azerbaijan reached an agreement on the text of the peace agreement, and the whole world actually celebrates that event and congratulates the parties to the conflict with coming to the conclusion of these negotiations. and then nothing happens. As the Azeri side starts to shoot on the border. What that means? Well, that means a very simple thing. Azerbaijan does not want peace agreement with Armenia. It is busy with manipulating Nikol Pashinyan's vulnerable position for, exerting more and more concessions through peaceful ways. I mean, why would Azerbaijan think about, sparing one life of a soldier or, a bullet if it can reach the same outcome through peaceful negotiations with Nikol Pashinyan, who actually does it only because he needs to show to the Armenian people that he can deliver the peace to Armenia. And that's becoming a very dangerous situation because, we were still 1 year away from the upcoming elections. And this whole period can be used by Aliyev for seizing more and more territories or concessions from Armenian present government, because this government is interested in keeping its power by creating the illusion that it leads the Armenian people to peace. That's abominable. That's intolerable. And you know what? We have to explain to our people, to our society, that you cannot ask for peace. The peace cannot be, brought to the table by asking, by, going and
Begging.
saying, huh?
And begging for it.
By begging to Erdogan and to Aliyev. Those are humiliating scenes that we are witnessing every moment. The whole body language of Nikol Pashinyan show that he considers now Erdogan as his big father and Aliyev his big brother. He's respectful only to those two leaders. Others do not exist for him anymore. He's begging the peace, but peace has never been begged. The only way to bring Aliyev to peace is to show that Armenia has potential for resistance. Only in that case, Aliyev will start to think about, signing a peace agreement with Armenia.
So we'll come back to the 2026 elections later, but Lavrov was in Yerevan earlier this week. The initial stated goals of the Russian visit were to facilitate Armenia and Azerbaijan, as well as Armenia and Turkish, normalization. What are your thoughts on the visit? Was it successful, and what role is Russia seeking in those negotiations for normalization? Yeah.
In a sense, this visit is also related to one of the main failures of Nikol Pashinyan's policies. What I mean, you all remember that Nikol Pashinyan's teams and his whole state propaganda started to say that, all our problems come because Russia has this imperial design on Armenia, because they collude with Azerbaijanis to seize Armenian lands. They want to, put Armenia in submission, and actually even to seize Armenia as part of Russian state. All these kind of things. So that we need to do everything in our best to sever the ties with Russia, to reorient our economy to the West, and find the ways to for, as they put, independent, autonomous existence with severed ties with Russia. Well, they were trying, and by the way, that's another mission that Nikol Pashinyan wants to sell to his own people. One mission we spoke about was this mission of peacemaker, that he gives that illusion that he is actually bringing peace to Armenia, as we already spoke about this. Another mission that he wants to sell to Armenia is that he's trying to explain all the failures of his government by, Russian intrigues, by the desire of Russians, to actually annihilate independent Armenian state. And of course, he knows what he's doing, because, after this Karabakh war, there was very fertile ground for for anti-Russian moods within in our society, because people had exaggerated expectations from Russia on their possible help to save for Nagorno-Karabakh autonomous from Azerbaijan. That didn't happen. The Russians, of course, are somehow guilty for that also, because they were not bold enough towards Azerbaijan, which can be explained also by the fact that they had their hands busy in Ukraine, and they actually devoted their whole military resources, organizational resources to the Ukraine war, and they were afraid at some moment to have another confrontation, another front with Azerbaijan and possibly Turkey. But on the other hand, I understand that there is this fertile ground for anti-Russian mood in our society. But what Pashinyan did, he started to exploit that mood for his own electoral purposes.
I was going to ask if he exploited it or he cultivated it.
He did both. He exploited it, he cultivated it, and once again he exploited it. And he tries to sell, besides this mission of peacemaker, he tries to sell to his own people this mission of liberating of Armenia from Russian imperialism and bringing Armenia to the West. And that's why this whole process of joining European Union has been initiated. But once again, we see that this is merely a PR show, because they took a decision. The parliament actually adopted a law on accession of Armenia to the European Union. You would think that some steps should follow after such a decision. You have to begin negotiations, talks with the European Union. You have to negotiate the conditions, etc., etc. But nothing happens. And then Lavrov's come to Yerevan, and in a very proud way, the Armenian authorities declare that, well, they adopted that law, but they didn't mean it.
And no steps have been taken.
No steps
to
have
join
been
the EU. Yeah.
No steps. How idiotic can you get? I mean, how can what this policy means? I mean, do you want to go to European Union or you don't?
Levon, what was the key reason why Lavrov visited Yerevan? What role is Russia seeking in the region and in Armenia?
I think Russia understands that the Nikol Pashinyan now is in completely failed state, and that his policy is in stalemate, and they want to seize this moment of sobering when the Armenian authorities understood finally that no support is coming from the West to save Armenia from possible Azeri aggression. And Russia responds to this sobering by the Armenian government. So they came here to get assurances that Armenia, while adopting this law on the extension to the European Union, doesn't mean it. So that Armenia keeps all participation in all the institutions, especially in the institutions of collective security with Russia. Lavrov came to get those assurances, and he got it.
Right.
That's what's happening. But what I want to stress, but damage has been done. I mean, this whole maneuver that Nikol Pashinyan did, trying to switch from its Armenia's geopolitical orientation from Russia to the West and then back, that actually
huge damage in trust, certainly.
Not only in trust. I mean, we lost Karabakh on this maneuver.
And without, and even I guess,
territories.
In fact, I was going to ask, in what way is Russia planning to come back to the Caucasus? Because even before the war, even when we knew that Russia could not be an ally to Armenia like Turkey is to Azerbaijan, Armenia before 2020 did have some gravitas to it. And now it seems like we are much more vulnerable geopolitically, even if Russia is making a comeback. And here I want to see, I want to ask, okay, Russia is trying to sort of maybe salvage the situation, but is Armenia vulnerable for satisfying Russian demands too? And one of those demands, or one of those desires, let's just put it this way, is to be the traffic cop, essentially, on the extraterritorial corridor that Turkey and Azerbaijan want through Armenia, the so-called Zangezur corridor. Meanwhile, Iran has categorically rejected this and has spoken about it as a red flag for it. So is Russia open to, let's say, negotiating away more of Armenia's sovereignty on Armenia's behind, simply because we don't have the geopolitical strength now to resist that? And maybe that is the least worst option for us, or should we pay more credence to Iran's threats about the inviolability of Armenia's own borders, and how can Iran so what is the difference between Iranian and Russian policies, and do you think that Russia really wants this corridor, or is it simply like, if it's going to be there, then I will I want to control it?
Well, let me start from the assumption that Russia has not completely freed its hands from Ukraine. While this is the strategic direction, given the fact that Trump's administration has taken a new course in diplomacy, and it seems like there is some movement to the formalization of possible Russian victory in the Ukrainian conflict. But things are not there yet, meaning that Russia is not completely out of troubles related to Ukraine. On the other hand, it is much more self-assured, given the facts that we just discussed. And what's even more important, those facts are now obvious also for the Armenian leadership. I don't buy those assumptions that what Russia wants is to make Armenia part of Russia or somehow destroy the sovereignty of Armenia. I don't buy it. In fact, Russia understands completely that with weak Armenia, or with Armenia, which does not exist as strong, powerful factor in the Caucasus, they have weaker positions in the Caucasus. If Armenia is destroyed, if Azerbaijan gets by force its coveted corridor through Zangezur, then those would be very bad times for Russia, because it would lose its power in or influence in the Caucasus, and that probably would be a very undesired development for Russia. So there are some probably there are some red lines for Russia. They could make some concessions towards Azerbaijan and Turkey, so that they make their Caucasus possible front line safer. But there are some red lines. They cannot afford retreating from the Caucasus. Let me quickly finish to answer the question that Tavik was actually asking, because one of the demands of Azerbaijan that you were speaking is that Zangezur corridor. So, and Tavik was asking whether Russia wants actually to compel Armenia to provide this corridor to Azerbaijan and Turkey or not. The quick answer to that would be that, of course, something has changed from the November 9, 2020, because that peace plan was a Russian peace plan of mutual provision of transportation connections between Armenia and Azerbaijan under the Russian auspices. That plan was aborted because of Pashinyan's policies, because he didn't want to actually fulfill his part of the agreement and give the transportation connection between Nakhichevan and Azerbaijan in the way that it was supposed in the 9 November 2020 agreement. And now, if Russia insists on the provision of the corridor, that would be a very unilateral concession for Armenia. I think we have to renegotiate the agreement, and I think Russia can hear to our reasonable objections to the unilateral implementation of the trilateral agreement. There is potential there. I believe we can negotiate with Russia on this. On the issue of the constitution, we all understand that that demand has nothing to do with real desire of Aliyev for greater safety for Azerbaijan. Because, it is absolutely obvious that from the judicial point of view, there is no territorial claims engraved in our constitution. Nothing, zero. Especially given the very concrete decision of the Constitutional Court of Armenia, saying, interpreting the very clause that Aliyev refers to as lacking any territorial claims towards Azerbaijan. The Constitutional Court has explicitly decided that that clause has no territorial claims to Armenia. So after all these, when Aliyev, since once again comes up with those demands, we understand that he does it because he needs a pretext not to sign the peace agreement with Armenia and to continue this policy of, getting new concessions from Armenia. And also, the most important thing is that Azerbaijan wants to keep open its for Azerbaijan the possibility of engaging in war with Armenia in case of the chaos that can ensue when the United States and Israel start the attack against Iran. He doesn't want to close that window of opportunity. He wants to keep it open. He wants to keep it open. He wants to keep his military options open on the table. So the constitutional change demand is a pretext. He's just playing with Armenia, playing with Nikol Pashinyan, playing with our dignity.
Yeah, like you said, the manipulation factor is the more important issue here.
Yes, he's manipulating the vulnerability of Nikol Pashinyan in his own society.
Given that we're coming to 2026 elections, and I mean, maybe this is just Aliyev playing with Pashinyan, but Pashinyan is taking that threat very seriously. He has moved up the date for the constitutional changes from 2027 to 2026, and many internal experts believe that he will time the elections in such a way that they will coincide with the referendum, even though that's precluded by law right now. But they have the majority to change the law anyway. So do you see that as a possibility? And essentially, I just don't see how that will end. But do you think it's possible for Pashinyan to try to change the constitution as Aliyev wants?
Any attempt to make this constitutional change is doomed to failure. The Armenian nation would not accept that. The Armenian nation would not accept, anything dictated from above, especially from Azerbaijan.
Even if he sugarcoats it in terms of a EU referendum or some maybe even, I think that, I don't know what will happen. I can't predict it, but yes, I do agree that it's going to be difficult to convince the public to go and vote for a constitution that is so humiliating to oneself. But maybe one way they can ensure quorum on that day is to stack the elections with so many like sugar-coated options for the public, like more loans or forgiveness of loans and things like that, such that they can basically steamroll the constitutional changes anyway.
But let me ask you one question: who said that the constitutional change requested by Aliyev, if implemented, would satisfy his appetites?
We know it won't.
Nothing.
Yeah.
No, you don't know. I mean, probably it's better to say that it will not satisfy it. He would come up with new demands. The one that we see, and he started to repeat this every day, that he demands that Armenian government creates good conditions, safe conditions for the return of all so-called Azerbaijanis from the Western Azerbaijan. He calls Azeris from Armenia that way. He wants the return of Azeri population to Armenia. And that's another demand. Can you tell me where these demands can end? I mean, then he would demand, that Azerbaijani becomes another state language of Armenia. Then he will, demand that, Azerbaijani Islamic institutions were given, all the possibilities to function in Armenia, etc. This is unstoppable flow of demands. So no, I don't believe that that's a way for Armenia. In relation with the upcoming elections, I will tell you one thing. In Armenia, we have now two political forces that have already positioned themselves as major players in the upcoming elections. One is Nikol Pashinyan with his agenda of bringing peace, fighting Russian imperialism, and confiscating illegal properties from plunderers of Armenia. That's one. Another force, it's a force of the second president of Armenia, Robert Kocharyan, which says that we have to put all our stakes on Russia, that we have to, somehow state that we don't close the Nagorno-Karabakh page, which, if you translate from this language to ordinary language, means that you can expect some how to say problems and probably even resumption of war with Azerbaijan. Now, is that, the whole political system of Armenia has become a hostage to these two poles. But the people want something different. People want those who can bring peace, yes, but real peace, not an illusionary one that Pashinyan wants to sell to his own people, and who were not engaged in corruption as Robert Kocharyan was. So people want some new a consolidated political force that they will be ready to vote for. And the most important thing, I would define the following way. In 1988, there was this pan-Armenian movement that took the whole our nation in the struggle for Karabakh, for independence, etc., etc. The most important essence of that movement was that it was completely Armenian agenda. So it was spontaneously formulated agenda of the Armenian people, something that comes from the soul of Armenians, from their intellect, and didn't bear any influence of any external powers. Unfortunately, what we now have in Armenia is a very fragmented society, demoralized society, and different fragments of this society are being manipulated by external powers. Every power is now, trying to put its soft influence in Armenia, trying to, bring spies so that they can influence whatever the Armenian government or the political system is doing. So we have now every kind of agenda in Armenia, Western agenda, European agenda, Russian agenda, Turkish agenda, Azeri agenda, Iranian agenda, but we don't have Armenian agenda anymore. So one of the most important goals that should unite our nation is now once again rise to the state of creating our own Armenian agenda, not dependent on any external influence. And that's the goal that we are trying now to negotiate with all the people, all the political forces who share with us realism, rationalism, and willingness to create merely Armenian agenda, not dependent on any external influence. And I believe that we can create that kind of a pole in the Armenian political system. And when we create it, it will quickly become the main alternative to the Nikol Pashinyan's regime, and that will ensure that 2026 elections can become a new opening for the Armenian nation.
Levon, for the sake of time, just one more question maybe. How do you see the current parliamentary opposition, which includes, of course, also Serj Sargsyan's Badivunem alliance, becoming relevant and offering or helping the opposition offer an alternative for the people? What does the opposition need to do? And that probably includes your party, the ANC, the National Congress, to offer a real alternative for people to vote for.
That's what I was trying to speak about. I mean, I believe that those parties that currently are in the parliament, they cannot offer anything valuable to the Armenian society, to the Armenian nation. They created some symbiosis between Nikol Pashinyan's governing party and this titular, as they call it, opposition. Why? This phenomenon of symbiosis between different animals that cooperate while not being friends, they cooperate. What we see is the following. This parliamentary opposition is a very convenient opposition for Nikol Pashinyan, because any criticism they raise immediately is being covered by accusation of corruption in the past, all the crimes that they have committed against the Armenian people, etc., etc. So that they cannot really criticize or provide a real alternative to the Pashinyan's government. On the other hand, Pashinyan is very convenient government for this opposition, because against the background of its incompetency and failures in the Karabakh conflict and failures regarding the security, they look very strong on those issues, and which allows them to somehow make the accusations of corruptions look less important. So this is we are all now a hostage to this political system in Armenia. We need to break it. We need to come up with new ideas, with new political consolidation that would really make people believe that change is possible, and make people believe that there could be another vision of Armenia that is, very attractive for our society. We are negotiating with different players, and one of the important parts of this negotiation is the platform on which we should unite. We need to offer to our society, very important parts of our platform, how we are planning to, give our economy a boost, how we are planning to reform our political system, how we are planning to reach some technological breakthroughs, because no economy can grow significantly if it's not based on some important niche technologies that only this country possesses and is able to actually develop. So we need to create this platform. We are in the process of working on this platform. We are in negotiations, and I really believe that soon we will come up with a new political force able to completely change the situation in Armenia. It will be a disruptive political technology, I believe, for our political system and for our society.
Mr. Zourabian, so I think that you in your previous answers you criticized the Armenian essentially political discourse as being between two poles, one by Nikol Pashinyan and the other pole represented by Robert Kocharyan. Um, However, I don't think you mentioned the Republican Party as part of those polls. So I wanted to ask a direct question that do you see as part of your negotiations a potential rapprochement between the ANC, your party, and the Republican Party, at least in terms of theory? And we know the history behind this because, Levon Zourabian, despite the common knowledge, which is that both President number two and President number three were enemies of Levon Zourabian, I think that uh, the situation between President number three and President number one has been more nuanced because there have been offers to cooperate in the past. And even more recently, Ser Sarkisyan, in his interviews, spoke fondly about Levon Zourabian. So I just want to pose a direct question. Do you see a possible ANC and RPA alliance in 2026, or do you exclude the possibility of that happening?
Well, I know that rumors are, circulating. There's a lot of talk now in the social networks, in the media about that possibility. But I have to be honest with you, we don't work on that. The project that I was talking about is related to other political forces, other political figures, other intellectuals. So we're not working on that. I believe, of course, I don't think we need to, fight against each other because there are more important issues now in Armenia to be resolved. But no, we are not planning creation of a bloc or electoral bloc with the Republican Party. Maybe we can cooperate on some issues, but not the issue of going together to the elections.
Unfortunately, the Armenian political universe is so small that I fail to think of any other political force that would be part of this scheme if it's not the Republicans. So can you give us some hints as to who, or what are going to be the bases for these new sort of things, that new, I guess, consolidation that you envision?
Well, the only thing I can say is wait and see.
Okay.
I cannot provide names. Then it's a very broad spectrum of political figures and political forces that we are negotiating with. But the negotiations are still in progress, and there is some confidentiality protocols that we cannot break.
Okay.
And,
Sounds good.
So please forgive me for being a little bit succinct on that, but I'm not going to name names.
Okay, we will wait, and we're eager to hear any news. And thank you for addressing some of these speculations head on. I think this is a good point to pause our discussion until a future date. So I do appreciate your being our guest today.
What I can promise to you is that when we, come up with this new opening of this political alliance, I am ready to give you interview first and speak in more detail.
That'll be great. We look forward to that. Thank you, Mr. Zourabian.
Thank you very much for this opportunity.
Sounds good. Thank you.
All right. Well, that's our show today. This episode was recorded on May 23, 2025. We've been talking with Mr. Levon Zourabian, who is the Vice President of the Armenian National Congress Party of Armenia, the ANC, which is led by the first president of Armenia, Levon Ter-Bedrosyan, who was in office from 1991 to 1998. Mr. Zourabian worked in the presidential administration as aide and chief spokesman to the president. He currently makes appearances as a technical advocate for the ANC.
Thank you for hanging on with us, folks. Just a quick reminder to comment, like, share our content. If you're feeling generous, go to podcast.groong.org/donate, or just to our website. You will see a donate link on there. And also explore the show notes for the show for other interesting notes and more information about our guests. Thank you for listening to us, and we will talk to you soon.
Take care.